Hi, my name is Nick Kovacs, and my disorder card was for borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder, BPD, is a cluster B disorder, and cluster B disorders are characterized by erratic, emotional, and dramatic behavior coupled with impulsivity and unstable emotions and unstable relationships. So the name in and of itself can be confusing. Does it mean like borderline insane? Or like in the movie we saw Susanna say borderline between what and what. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the DSM criteria, which is kind of lengthy, but bear with me and try and get a clear picture of it. So the DSM defines BPD as a pervasive pattern of instability of interpersonal relationships, that means like with others, and self-image and marked impulsivity beginning in early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts. So an individual can be diagnosed with BPD if they're experiencing one of the 5 symptoms that are listed. So the first symptom is frantic attempts to avoid real life or imagined abandonment. And this is a big one for people with BPD. They generally just have the sense that everything around them is crumbling and they're going to be left alone. So the second symptom is a pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships characterized by extremes, idealization, and devaluation. So this is kind of like that all or nothing thinking, that the person's either going to be your best friend or they're going to hate you and it's going to be detrimental to you. A third symptom is identity disturbance, and this is marked by persistent unstable self-image or idea of self. That's kind of self-explanatory. Impulsivity in at least 2 areas that could be self-damaging. So these can be behaviors like substance abuse, sex life, or eating disorders, unhealthy eating patterns. That can be all listed in that self-damaging category. Another symptom would be recurrent suicidal or self-mutilating thoughts, behaviors, or language. They're just trying to change something about themselves. Another would be affective instability due to marked reactivity of mood, meaning that they just behave inappropriately because of their violent mood swings and they're unable to regulate their extreme moods. They're very extreme in how they're feeling. Another symptom would be chronic feelings of emptiness, which again is pretty self-explanatory. Inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty regulating their anger. They may be extremely irritable or short-tempered. And a final symptom would be stress-related paranoid ideation or other severe dissociative symptoms. So just the feeling that people are out to get you or they have extreme ideas of suspicion about the world. So moving into the data and more the analytical side of it, like prevalence and occurrence, I was able to find 2 studies. The first one I'm going to talk about was a study done by the Netherlands, who actually care a great deal about their people. They have great healthcare and other huge, you can read about it if you feel like it. But this one's from July of 2016, and it's an incident survey that they sent out to their people. The participants are the people of Netherlands. So in the second wave of participants, there were 5,303 people that were listed in this study. And starting at the top, 70% of those people reported having at least one symptom listed in the DSM. And the numbers go down as you go through. 25.2% had reported 1 to 2 symptoms, 3.8% 3 to 4 symptoms, and 1.1% only reported having 5 or more symptoms, which is the criteria for being diagnosable. So something else that I really wanted to mention about this study was that in the category of 5 or more symptoms, that was the only place where you see a significant increase in the number of females to males. So throughout the 1 through 4 symptoms, the ratio is pretty even, but when you start experiencing 5 or more symptoms is when you get a higher proportion of females to males in that category, which is interesting to say the least. And my second study that I was able to find was from the National Institute of Mental Health, and it studied U.S. adults from 2001 to 2003. It's a bit dated, but that's what I was able to find. It found that BPD is present in 1.4% of U.S. adults. Now, something else I wanted to point out was that in the same study, they found that of all personality disorders, 39% seek treatment, but of people with BPD, that number bumps up to 42.4%. So it could suggest that BPD is a touch more maladaptive in everyday life than other personality disorders. But it may just also be due to the fact that a data error or something else. But that number is extremely low in both those categories. So that's something totally different to be said about that. So moving into treatment, I wanted to note that for BPD, there's been no single modality to be found more effective than another. Like most mental illnesses, you're going to get the best effective treatment with a combination of psychotherapy and medication. Typically, common SSRIs are used along with other antidepressants, but in BPD, it's very important that the medication takes sort of an adjunctive role to the therapy. I think the focus should be more on therapy, and especially with people in BPD. Now, in the therapy, it's important to mention that, the disorder in and of itself is characterized by the inability to form relationships. So that relationship between the therapist and the client is going to be harder to maintain. It's going to be harder to even create in the first place, and it's likely going to happen at a lot slower rate. So one thing to keep in mind when dealing with patients or clients with BPD is that they want to have the sense that the therapy is doing something for them, that they're getting progress from therapy, and it's moving them forward. I mean, without that, it's going to be a lost cause, essentially. Yeah, so that's pretty important. And to wrap things up, BPD, like, I held a lot of misconception about what the disorder was leading up to this week. It's put in that cluster B category, along with antisocial personality disorder and narcissistic. So being in that category, I just held a lot of misconceptions personally about it. But I have learned a lot this week through the movie and doing research for this project. Generally, I think it's kind of characterized as basically terming someone else's thoughts and emotions and behaviors, actions, whatever, as not fitting into what we were accustomed to, what we think they should do. I hope this video has helped you learn a little bit more about BPD, and yeah, thanks.